Hello and welcome to The World Today. I'm Millicent Walker. First, the headlines. EU leaders unable to agree on ending supplies of Russian oil and gas, says Germany's economy minister. And Qantas Airways orders Airbus jets for world's longest non-stop flight. Plus, the Pegasus spyware is detected on the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez's phone. Welcome everyone, I'm Millicent Walker. Now the EU energy ministers meeting in Brussels are still unable to agree on ending supplies of Russian oil and gas. Germany's oil minister Robert Habeck says Germany and the European Union want to avoid economic catastrophes by thoughtlessly imposing an embargo on Russian oil. At their meeting earlier today, Poland's climate minister called for immediate sanction on Russian oil and gas. Germany would be able to weather an EU embargo on Russian oil imports by the end of this year, even though a stoppage could result in shortages. Well, the comments are coming as the European Commission is expected to propose a sixth package of EU sanctions this week against Russia over its invasion of Ukraine, including a ban on buying Russian oil, a move that would cut off a large revenue stream to Moscow, but which has so far divided EU countries. Russia supplies 40% of EU gas and 26% of its oil imports.
Germany is not against an oil ban on Russia. Of course, it is a heavy load to bear, but we are ready to do that. It would help if we have some weeks or months more time to do all the preparations, meaning the technical preparations. So we have to find some ships carrying oil from west to east. We have to prepare the harbors. We have to prepare the pipelines. So time is helpful, but I think other countries have bigger problems. And
as I mentioned, we are on the safe side. We are also ready when it comes to infrastructure to refine oil and to be fully independent from Russian oil. And I do believe that all European countries can do the same. We also express our solidarity and we are ready to support countries, to supply them with non-Russian fossil fuels. We are ready to be solidarious with our infrastructure and to supply them if necessary.
EU leaders there meeting over Russia gas. But back in Ukraine, buses with evacuees from the besieged Azovstal plant in Mariupol traveled today to Zaporizhia from a village where the Russian military had set up a temporary camp. The convoy led by the International Committee for the Red Cross was seen in Benzime village. Among the evacuees was Yelena Atulova, 44, who told news agencies about how they sheltered in the vast Azovstal industrial complex since February 24. Azovstal is located the Sea of Azov port that has been devastated by weeks of Russian shelling and has served as a refuge for both civilians and a dwindling number of Ukrainian troops as Moscow has claimed control of Mariupol. Thousands are believed to have been killed and those still stuck in the complex, whose network of bunkers and tunnels has provided shelter, but running out of water, food and medicine. The Russian army said 126 people had left Mariupol in safe convoys over Saturday and Sunday from the steelworks and other districts for separatist-controlled Donetsk. Of these, 57 opted to stay in that area, while the others had decided to leave for Ukrainian-held parts, it said. Ukraine's naval forces have published a video today they said showed Ukrainian drone strikes hitting 2 Russian high-speed patrol boats in the Black Sea. Ukraine's military chief said 2 Russian Raptor-class patrol boats were destroyed in the area today by Ukrainian Bayraktar drone. It says 2 Russian Raptor-class boats were destroyed near Zimny, called Snake Island. This is from the Chief General Staff, who wrote by Telegram. Now, there was no immediate reaction from Moscow to the claim. Elsewhere, U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi met with Polish President Andrzej Duda at the presidential palace in Warsaw today. Pelosi's office issued a statement saying that the U.S. delegation came to Poland to send an unmistakable message to the world that America stands firmly with NATO allies in the support for Ukraine. In the meeting, officials are set to discuss how they can further work together to support Ukraine. Ms. Pelosi met Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Kiev on Sunday. President Joe Biden asked Congress to approve the aid package on Thursday in what would mark a dramatic escalation of U.S. funding for Ukraine. Moscow calls its actions a special military operation to disarm Ukraine and rid it of anti-Russian nationalism fomented by the West. Ukraine and the West say Russia launched an unprovoked war of aggression.
I państwa, naszych dostojnych gości tutaj w Warszawie.
And VOA's our correspondent Anna Chanikova joins us now from Kiev in Ukraine. Hi, Anna. Anna, I want to begin with the missile explosion in Kiev, and this is where you are. It was also during the UN Secretary General's visit. What was that like?
Hello. Just at the end of last week, on Thursday, Kiev was shot by 2 missiles. Well, actually 5 missiles, but 2 missiles reached the residential house. This was just during the visit of the UN Secretary General and of the Prime Minister of Bulgaria as well. So this was clearly considered as kind of, we call it here the postcard from Moscow. It was definitely an attack on the EU officials and UN official. Mr. Guterres just finished the meeting with President Zelensky when 2 missiles actually exploded. Unfortunately, the residential building was very heavily damaged, and 1 person has died. This person is our colleague, a journalist from Radio Liberty. She was living there. The explosion happened just about 50 meters from the visa center of the UK. Because the area where strikes reached is very close to the city center, and it's a beginning of the diplomatic quarter, as it's called in Kiev, because there are a lot of embassies and visa centers in there. So this attack was definitely considered as disrespect and threatening of the European community and international community for their support in this war for Ukraine. But again, definitely the reaction was very fast, the reaction back, and international community reached out saying that they're not going to be afraid, and there's not going to change anything in their relation with Ukraine and their support for Ukraine in this war.
And Anna, it's really sad what happened to our colleague of Radio Liberty and to all who have indeed suffered risking their lives covering the invasion in Ukraine. But then something good, some would say, came out of this. And this is with the UN-backed evacuation of citizens in Mariupol, we understand is also continuing today. How far is that coming along?
Yes, finally, the decision has been taken, and at least certain decision. 100 people were evacuated yesterday from Azovstal plant. This is definitely the result of the visit of Mr. Guterres to Moscow and to Kiev. at least it looks very much like that, and I'm sure that this is exactly the reason. So finally, the civilians were able to get out from the shelter, from the underground, deep underground, I should say, in more than 2 months. A lot of children, a lot of women, and old people, together with their pets, were able to leave Mariupol yesterday. So 100 people are already in Zaporizhia, where Ukrainian government prepared everything for their meeting, for their accommodation, and for any help, any medical aid they would need. Of course, together with the UN and with the Red Cross, and this is a huge victory together, I should say. Today, the evacuation continues, and this is a very good sign, of course. Today, evacuation has a little wider spread, because it was confirmed that evacuation would start in Mariupol, and according to the latest information, it has already started. We don't know yet where exactly the convoy is at the moment, but it's supposed to reach Zaporizhia by the end of the day. And it would be additional 2 stops from Mariupol, on the way from Mariupol to Zaporizhia, so people could join the convoy from additional 2 spots of the region, and also civilian cars could join the convoy at the end. So basically, we hope that more people than yesterday would be able to get out from the blockade, from the blocked region. But again, we will see, because Russian forces created a so-called filtration border. So basically, people are coming there together with UN representatives and Red Cross, and Russian forces are kind of, checking out, doing interviews, whatever, and only after that people are let out from Mariupol and let into the Ukrainian control side. So we'll see how it's going on, but hopefully, really hopefully, that more people would be able to get out, because I just would like to remind you that more than 1,000 civilians are at the moment at the Azovstal plant, and a lot of them are injured, because for the past 2 months, Mariupol and Azovstal in particular are under severe attacks with different kind of bombs and all this different kind of missiles. So it's really a huge hope that this would happen quite fast, and more than 100 people per day would be able to get out.
And concerning the Azovstal, we know what Putin said last time: not even a single fly should be allowed to pass through there. So it is really good seeing that this is happening now. But the question is, will all parties, and this is also especially Russia, will they see things through? And this is with, this sort of corridor of hope, evacuating these civilians. And this is also, as we're hearing on the other hand, that the strikes have not necessarily stopped.
Yes, exactly. I should say that it's clearly seen that Ukrainian forces have a lot of success at the front line. And I think this is also one of the reasons why this actually was able to, to proceed with this evacuation, because Russia is forced to negotiate and forced to let people, civilians, out at the battlefield. And this is very important to understand. It's not only because of the international stage negotiations, because as we can see, the negotiations are happening for quite a long time already, and only now this was finally possible. Well, I think that at least what we hope for, that this evacuation would also be for other people, other civilians from Mariupol, because I also would like to remind you that in total, more than 120,000 people are still blocked in Mariupol, and they are now under Russian control. And of course, they also need help, and they need to be saved and need to be evacuated to the Ukrainian control side. So for the moment, this is what it is. There is no question for the moment regarding evacuation of the soldiers, of the injured soldiers. But again, we'll see how it's going on and how it will be going on and how it will be changing, because again, everything is decided on the battlefield for the moment.
And Anna, let's talk about Kherson. We understand Russian troops are controlling Kherson and said that the ruble would be used in the city from Sunday. I mean, did this happen? Can you tell us what's going on there?
Officially, there is no confirmation about ruble for the moment. There are some, let's say, some people told that some pensions were paid in rubles. But again, this is not confirmed information. But this is what civilians are telling, that some people got the rubles pension. But again, these people, they don't want to support, because Kherson is very Ukrainian city. And also you can see it from all the protests that they do. And when they get out to the square with no weapon and just with Ukrainian flags, to say that they're not supporting this. So people basically exchange rubles into Ukrainian hryvnias, and they don't want to use rubles. So they gonna, kind of protest. It's their little protest, as they say, that they exchange rubles back into Ukrainian hryvnias. So for the moment, as officials of Kherson administration who are still working and who are still in the city, they mentioned that in terms of banking system, it's not possible for the moment for ruble to start operation, because Ukrainian banking system is working. So officially, I cannot confirm it. And definitely it will be very difficult for Russian side to do this, because again, as Ukrainian President Zelensky mentioned, if anything like this happens, and if anything like so-called quasi-republic referendum created by Russians would take place, this would end any negotiations between the sides. So we'll see how it's gonna continue in there. But for the moment, I cannot confirm anything like that.
And with this happening in Kherson, give us a picture of perhaps where Russia has some sort of stronghold. Kherson on the one hand, then there's Zaporizhia, there's Mariupol, and there is Donbass, which they've said they've taken all the fighting to.
You need to understand that Kherson, and everyone needs to understand that Kherson is a crucial point, because this is so for Russian side. It's a very crucial point, because it's kind of a protection of Crimea, and it's kind of a corridor to Crimea. It's another seaside. They will definitely want to have a long-term control of Kherson and the region. But again, Ukrainian forces had certain success in the region of Kherson. Also, Kherson is a very important point in terms of logistics, because if Russian forces control Kherson perfectly, then they can proceed and go on to Mykolaiv and to Kryvyi Rih, which is on the way and also on the way up to the Zaporizhia region. So this is kind of a crucial central point. But again, you've probably heard about Chornobaivka, which is a little city next to Kherson, and this is kind of the main logistics arteria of the region. And today we got official information confirmed by the Ukrainian officials that it was 18th time that Ukrainian army destroyed all the supplies by Russians, because all the supplies, military supplies, are going through Chornobaivka. So 18 times already Ukrainians destroyed, and Russians continue to bring supplies there because there is no other way. So in terms of Kherson, it would be very, very difficult for Russians to keep on with Kherson, because as you correctly mentioned, they have to concentrate their main forces at Donbass. And Donbass is another crucial, very important region, and the most severe fightings are going on there right now. So for Russian side, it would be really, really difficult to concentrate, big forces in both areas. And as it looks for the moment, they will have to choose, because Ukrainian forces, they prepare quite successful counterattacks in the past days. So we'll see how all this will end and will go on. But again, for the moment, Kherson remains under Russian control.
We appreciate your time, Anna. Continue to stay safe. Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you.
Welcome back. May Day was marked with anything but celebrations on Sunday. Instead, rallies and protests mirrored impact of government policies and dissatisfaction among the populace. France's re-elected president will not be spared the realities on ground, as many instead prepared to participate in huge rallies across the country. May Day, an annual holiday, is observed all over the world to celebrate the economic and social achievements of workers. Here's more from around the world.
Let's begin in North Korea, where the day was marked with a series of sporting events in Pyongyang, the capital. In footage provided by the North's official news agency, the KCNA, employees were seen competed against each other in volleyball, basketball and tennis matches, as their colleagues clapped and cheered on the sidelines. Across Latin America, thousands marched through the streets of Buenos Aires, Caracas, La Paz and Lima to raise their voices against social injustices and demand better labor conditions. Struck by unfavorable economic conditions, high inflation and rising prices worsened by the war in Ukraine, various Latin American countries battle to maintain competitiveness in the global market. In Lima, Peruvian President Pedro Castillo expressed his recognition to the workers for their efforts and permanent sacrifice to fight for justice. In Caracas, President Nicolás Maduro gave a news conference announcing there would be a rise in wages for Venezuelan workers. Meanwhile, thousands of Cubans made their way to Havana's Revolution Square for the traditional May Day celebrations attended by Miguel Díaz-Canel, who looked on with former President Raúl Castro. Following a 2-year hiatus as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, this year marks the return of the nation's most important holiday after January 1st, the victory day for former leader Fidel Castro's 1959 revolution. And in Europe, in Greece, thousands of workers took to the streets in protest over the high prices and energy costs plaguing households as the conflict in Ukraine takes its toll on European economies. According to police, some 10,000 protesters marched in the capital and gathered outside the Parliament building for May Day, the International Workers' Day used to call for better wage and labour conditions. Island ferries and public transport also came to a halt as part of strikes by some workers. The protest on Sunday followed another demonstration on April 6th over the cost of living as inflation has reached record highs. Finally, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz spoke at a May Day rally of unions in Düsseldorf on Sunday, facing protesters holding various signs, some for the Chancellor, some against. Chancellor Scholz is under pressure at home and abroad to supply Ukraine with heavy arms such as tanks and howitzers, and support an immediate EU embargo on Russian energy imports to strip President Vladimir Putin of hard currency that helps him finance the war. But as the rallies wore on, they turned awry. Police detained 11 people. Late scuffles broke out after the mostly peaceful march through major districts. Several people were seen being detained by officers as the sound of breaking glass and fireworks going off nearby was heard.
Away from the rallies, it might surprise you to know that while cities like Shanghai and China reimpose tight restrictions to boost COVID testing 2 years on, some other cities around the world are only just reopening. Here's more in this report.
It's not only Shanghai that is going through tough times with COVID. Residents of Beijing, China experienced a subdued May Day holiday today after the city's 22 million people in the past week conducted mass testing in most of its 16 districts, suspended all entertainment venues and banned restaurant dining. Authorities have tightened COVID-19 restrictions over the 5-day Labor Day that runs through Wednesday, May the 4th, but has not locked down. Instead, relying, at least for now, on mass testing to locate and isolate infections.
Is coming and going as they used to.
As for Shanghai, pace of work and production resumption after a month-long citywide quarantine due to the latest resurgence of COVID-19 has quickened. The city reported one case on March the 1st and has opened nearly 60,000 new cases since then. But new cases have been on the decline in the past few days, and the city government says the overall situation is under control. The city has now started its recovery process with 5,851 work resumption passes and 87,766 travel passes for supply and delivery services issued so far. Health officials in South Korea have lifted an outdoor mask mandate in the latest step to relax distancing curbs as COVID-19 cases drop, but many residents are still seen wearing them, worried about possible infection. The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency reported 20,084 new COVID-19 cases for Sunday, May the 1st, with daily cases continuing to drop from a peak of more than 620,000 in mid-March. On the brighter side, Hong Kong reopened to non-residents on Sunday as it tamed down its COVID-19 cases. It's the first time in 2 years that travelers have been allowed to enter the financial hub since the pandemic outbreak. Travelers welcome the relaxed measures.
It is still quite difficult to really have a significant growth on the traffic. So I think it is good, but definitely it won't really brings a significant increase on business for us. We would suggest the government to consider uplifting the circuit breaker measure, so we can have the there's no more flight suspension, so the airlines can operate more flights and then also more capacity.
Under new rules, however, travelers who enter the city must be fully vaccinated. They must also produce a negative PCR test result before boarding and get tested again upon arrival. Then they will head to designated quarantine hotels for at least 7 days. Hong Kong also eased rules on suspending flights carrying infected people. The easing measures will likely serve as a lifeline for the city's gloomy tourism. Finally, emotional scenes unfolded at the Auckland airport today as fully vaccinated travelers from 60 countries, including the United States and the UK, were allowed to enter New Zealand without needing to quarantine or isolate. Families and friends pulled each other into long hugs upon reuniting as flights touched down in Auckland, where moody dancers greeted them. While tourists from visa waiver countries, including the United States, Britain and Singapore, will now be able to visit New Zealand, the border will remain closed for all other visitors until October.
And Britons planning a summer holiday in Europe are being urged to check their passport meets EU rules. 2 travellers told of being turned away from departure gates because their documents fell foul of the requirements. It is an issue being made more urgent by delays in processing passport applications as demand for travel recovers following the COVID-19 pandemic. The government website says passports must meet 2 requirements for those planning to visit an EU country. The rule says they must be less than 10 years from the date of issue on the day you enter your destination. The passports must remain valid for at least 3 months after you leave. For some countries in the Schengen travel area, however, Your passport may need to be less than 10 years old during your whole visit, as the advice warns. The Schengen area comprises 26 EU countries which have abolished all passport and other border controls at their mutual borders. Well, joining us for more on this is Mr. Bankole Bernard. He's a travel expert. He joins us now virtually. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much.
First, break down this 10-year rule guidance, and does it apply to all countries?
Well, as you can see, it's we're still going to see more of things like this because the truth is the relationship that has gone sour as a result of Brexit will bring more of things like this. The Europeans really don't want the British to have their cake and eat it. And that's the more reason why we're seeing all this kind of developments in the a sort of travel restriction, if I may put it that way, just to limit the access granted to them when they were member of the EU. But now that they're no longer member of the EU, they need to put some restrictions and make it practically impossible for them to enjoy the goodies that the EU members are only allowed to enjoy at this particular point in time, which is expected because of the Brexit.
So perhaps in other words, the EU is trying to get back at the UK, and this only applies to, British citizens.
Oh, certainly, only to British citizens. Other countries around the world have their visa rules. Once your passport is valid for 6 months, you're actually allowed to go into the EU once you have a visa. And if you don't have a visa, if there's an arrangement between the EU and whatever country based on bilateral agreement they have or free visas, they're allowed into the country. So this rule is only applicable to the UK citizens.
And this same requirements, we understand, doesn't affect Ireland. That's definitely a special arrangement.
Well, that's where politics comes in, because as you're aware, I mean, we've got the Southern Ireland and we have the Northern Ireland, and it's going to be a bit difficult for you to say, okay, the Southern Ireland is part of the EU as well, and how are they going to say that, okay, Ireland citizens are equally are affected? So there's going to be some sort of exemption, and that's exactly what we have seen here. And I'm sure the British government too won't mind this kind of instance, because it means that the people can actually patronize domestic tourism rather than go into Europe to go and spend pounds, which is not really favorable to them. So it's a welcome idea for them, which will restrict the British people to spending their holiday on the British soil, so that the British government can make the money from that. So it's a win-win situation for them. You don't want us to come, okay, we'll stay back.
And the UK government says it is, asking the European Commission to clarify, this new measure. Do you see the UK doing anything to counter, sort of retaliate?
Well, they don't need to retaliate because they've actually set measures in place for the European countries. There's been a sort of restriction for them coming into the UK. Not the way they used to move freely into the UK before. So there's some sort of restriction for them. So this is actually a sort of counter retaliation on the part of EU. That, I mean, if we're not going to have people move freely into your country, then we better put in some measure as well, and not just let it be business as usual. So for both parties, it favors them. That's the truth, because it means that don't come into my country as you so desire. let your people stay in your country, and if they're going to come, we're going to subject them to all those rules. And if they can't take it, they leave it. So the British government is not going to do anything because they've already put in restrictions already. So the British people that are going to go is going to be out of compulsion that, okay, I want to spend my holiday in the EU, and so be it, and I have to go.
And also, demand for travel is recovering following the COVID-19 pandemic. I know we had you severally when we had the program, the COVID-19 update. But now it seems face masks on flights could be enforced for years. And this is depending on what part of the world you're in. But at least that is still a requirement in Nigeria. Why do you think this is? And should that be the case, will we see some sort of consistency soon?
Well, as you can see, even though the wave, the COVID restriction has been reduced everywhere around the world, it's a fantastic idea, and that has increased the number of travelers moving up and down, which is good. And this is as a result of finding solution, because there's vaccine available everywhere now, and they're saying that if you're fully vaccinated, you can move freely. However, the use of face mask is still, required to be on flight. And I wouldn't expect this to go down in a short while. Reason being that we have people flying everywhere around the world. And when people move everywhere around the world, you don't know where the next someone that would have contacted it and bringing it to another country, or contacting it and passing to other people, infecting other people on the aircraft, which can lead to a surge. And by the way, have it at the back of your mind that it has been stated that there's going to be a surge of COVID in summer, because there's going to be a huge movement of people. And when there's a surge, of course, any normal country want to make sure that their citizens are protected. And I don't think Nigerian government can be exempted from this. I think they've done really well about this by ensuring that people use face masks at the airport and on the aircraft. At least that is still the most effective way to curb the transmission of this disease. However, everywhere around on ground, they've relaxed the rule, which is fair, and I think that we all should abide by this rather, so that we can continue to curb the wave of this COVID-19 to the barest minimum until
Indeed.
It disappears finally.
Very true. We're really hoping that, it comes to pass. We appreciate your time. Thank you so much, Mr. Bankole Bennett, for joining us on the program.
Thank you very much for inviting me. And have a lovely evening.
To you as well. Qantas Airways Limited said it had ordered 12 A350-1000 planes from Airbus SE to be used on what will be the world's longest commercial flight from Sydney to London, as well as 14 narrow-body jets to renew its domestic fleet. The deal comes as market conditions improve and demand for domestic and international travel recover from the pandemic faster than expected, allowing the carrier to reduce debt and forecast a return to profit in the financial year starting July 1. Qantas did not disclose the value of the deal, but it is likely to be in the billions of dollars based on aircraft list prices.
It's a big day for Qantas. It's a big day for Australian aviation. I think it's a big day for world aviation. Today, Qantas is making the biggest aircraft order in its history. It's going to order 20 firm orders for the A321 XLR, 20 A320s, and we will have 94 purchase rights and options. And with the Jetstar order for those aircraft, it takes us to a total of 299 aircraft. Enough aircraft to replace the entire Jetstar and Qantas domestic fleets over the next decades or so, which is phenomenal for us. And we always said that Qantas needed to transform to survive. We were 11 weeks from going bankrupt in 2020. But we also had to do this to make sure that we took the opportunities when the market recovered, and we could grab those opportunities. And today we also made a market announcement of how Qantas is performing. And we've seen unbelievable demand coming back, both domestically and internationally.
Still ahead on the programme. It's such a beauty to behold, talking about the Alpine Light Show in Italy, with this year's theme being water. Please stay with us. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz have signed a series of declarations of intent for cooperation today, for example, in the fight against climate change and the expansion of renewable energy and hydrogen use. Germany is making 10 billion euros available for bilateral cooperation with India in the coming years. This is what he said. German Olaf Scholz, German Chancellor, says when implementing the measures for these partnership projects, we will provide a great deal of funding over the next few years, altogether 10 billion. Well, Modi said his government was determined to make rapid progress towards a free trade agreement with the EU, and said he welcomed the German government's intention to support the expansion of relations with 10 billion euros by 2030. And this is following his trip to Germany. Modi is set to visit France and Denmark next. France's Greens have struck a deal with the HardLeft, France-bound party leaders, as the left seeks to form a joint front against President Emmanuel Macron in the upcoming parliamentary elections. Macron, who won a second mandate last month, needs a majority in parliament to implement pro-business policies, including plans to push back the retirement age. Early polls ahead of June 12-19 elections suggest Macron could achieve that, but opposition parties to the left and right are seeking to strike alliances in the hope of naming a prime minister and controlling parliament. Mélenchon, who came third in the presidential elections and barely missed qualifying for the runoff behind far-right populist Marine Le Pen, has called on all left-leaning parties to join forces with his movement. The LFI Greens deal includes aims of lowering the retirement age to 60, raising minimum wage and capping prices on essential products. Spanish authorities have detected Pegasus spyware in the mobile phones of Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez and Defense Minister Margarita Robles. The government minister for the presidency, Felix Bolaños, says Prime Minister Sanchez's phone was infected in May 2021 and that at least one data leak occurred then. He did not say who could have been spying on the premier and whether any foreign powers or Spanish groups were suspected of being behind it. The announcement followed intense pressure on the leftist coalition government to explain itself after Canada's digital rights group Citizen Lab said more than 60 people linked to the Catalan separatist movement had been targets of Pegasus spyware made by Israel's NSO group. After the allegations of spying on members of the Catalan separatist movements, the minority government's key ally in parliament, Catalonia's leftist pro-independence party, ERC, said it would not support the government until Madrid takes measures to restore confidence. The European Union's data protection watchdog has called for a ban on Pegasus over allegations it has been abused by clients' governments to spy on rights activists, journalists and politicians.
En el teléfono móvil del presidente en mayo de 2021 y una intervención.
And to Africa, where UNICEF's Executive Director, Catherine Russell, has urged the international community to immediately scale up support to avert a humanitarian catastrophe due to drought in Ethiopia and the rest of the Horn of Africa. She made the appeal at the end of a 4-day visit to Ethiopia. Due to 3 failed consecutive rainy seasons, 4 countries across the Horn of Africa are experiencing one of the worst droughts in decades. Overall, in Djibouti, Ethiopia, Kenya, Somalia, 10 million children need urgent life-saving support. The drought is pushing up malnutrition for children and their families at an alarming rate. Overall, 1.7 million children are severely malnourished across the sub-region.
Here in the Horn of Africa, where the consequences of a severe drought and 3 years of poor rains are really having a terrible impact on children. We're estimating 10 million children are in need of life-saving support. And at this point, 1.7 million children are requiring something we call, they have severe acute malnutrition, which is the most serious form of malnutrition, and we're treating them and treating as many as we can. The challenge here is that the needs are so much greater than what we're able to address at this point. And we don't know yet how bad it's going to get, but we do know for sure that many children are already suffering, are very much in need. Their mothers are in need, and you can see it when you talk to them. The mothers are so concerned, worried about what's happening to their children. But you know, we need more resources. We need to get more feeding to these children if we want to really avert a very serious and terrible problem here.
And the Chief Prosecutor of the International Criminal Court, ICC, Karim Khan, has revealed a new investigation strategy for the ongoing investigation into the situation in Libya to the UN Security Council. The ICC investigation focuses on alleged crimes against humanity and war crimes committed in Libya since the overthrow of Muammar Gaddafi's government in February 2011. The investigation also includes 3 unexecuted arrest warrants issued by the ICC. The ICC began its investigation in March 2011.
The binding reality is that in these types of crimes, we simply can't act alone. It's hubris to think that the ICC or any national authority very often can act alone when the crimes that seem to have taken place could constitute either genocide or crimes against humanity or war crimes. Structures are broken. Structures can't operate. Witness protection becomes a real issue in so many parts of the world. And the way to improve and bend the arc towards justice is by working together independently, effectively, testing evidence received from any source, trying to make sure evidence is reliable, and there's many tried and tested forensic means to do that. But if we do so, I think we can fulfill our mandate with ever greater efficiency. There are challenges. The political situation, the security situation in Libya that the Libyan authorities are dealing with is difficult. It's dynamic, it's challenging. Of course, it has implications to investigations, but there's always different means with goodwill, with imagination, to try to make sure things move forward effectively. I have tried to be transparent in this report. I have set benchmarks. I will continue to set more benchmarks so that hopefully we can ensure that the important responsibility given by this Council in Resolution 1970 is vindicated, and even more importantly, that the victims and the survivors are not an afterthought, that we put them center stage and make sure that their rights are properly and fully vindicated to the best of our abilities.
Meanwhile, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres has called for the military leaders in Burkina Faso, Guinea and Mali to hand power back to civilians as soon as possible. Speaking after meeting Senegalese President Macky Sall in Dakar, he said they had agreed on the need to keep talking to the de facto authorities in all 3 countries so as to get a swift return to constitutional order. All 3 countries struggling with a jihadist insurgency in the Sahel region have recently experienced military coups, Mali in August 2020 and May 2021, Guinea in September 2021, Burkina Faso in January 2022. Sall is the current chair of the West African bloc ECOWAS, which has suspended all 3 countries from its membership. ECOWAS imposed heavy sanctions against Mali in January after the regime there rejected a rapid return to civilian rule. It has threatened similar sanctions against Guinea and Burkina Faso if they fail to enable a swift transition to civilian rule within a reasonable time frame. Away from the continent, boxing legend Manny Pacquiao has signed up for his toughest fight yet in running for president of the Philippines, facing doubts about his leadership and commitment as a lawmaker that could dent his appeal and deal a big blow to his ambitions. The 43-year-old announced his candidacy September last year, declaring his readiness to rise to the challenge of leadership and battle poverty and corruption. As an 8-division world champion, Pacquiao is a national treasure, but analysts say he faces a huge challenge to convince the electorate he can lead a nation beset by problems ranging from crime, graft, and natural disasters to Islamist extremism, outdated infrastructure, and bloated bureaucracy. Pacquiao is no political novice, having served as both congressman and senator, winning elections with ease due to his mass appeal as one of the world's boxing's all-time greats and his rags-to-riches life story. His commitment to public service has also been questioned, with poor attendance in Congress and lengthy disappearances as a senator while training for big money fights abroad. With the Constitution only allowing a single term as president, Pacquiao will not have to take on popular incumbent Rodrigo Duterte, but he could face a formidable opponent in his daughter, Sara Duterte Capio. Shrugging off his low rating in opinion polls, he says his impoverished roots make him the best person to be president, as he warned voters to avoid corruption-tainted candidates. And Christies Geneva will auction off a 228.31 carat pear-shaped diamond known as the Rock on May the 11th. The white gemstone was mined and polished in South Africa over 2 decades ago. The May 11 auction will also feature a yellow 205.07 carat diamond known as the Red Cross diamond. The fancy brilliant cut diamond gets its yellow color from nitrogen atoms. Its estimated selling price is between $7 to $10 million. Part of the proceeds from the sale will go to the International Red Cross. Water is the theme of this year's Lights Festival in Bressanone in the Italian Alps, which was lit up by 29 light installations. It's the 4th time the city organizes the festival, this year named Water is Life, Light is Art. And the various works of art have been connected by a 3.2-kilometer long blue line, creating an art trail in the old town. Festival director Wena Zanotti says water is of crucial importance for the city, which features the Isaac and Rienz rivers and several drinking fountains with water coming from the nearby mountains. On May 16, which is the United Nations International Day of Light, the theme will switch to the importance of light for 1 week until the festival ends on the 22nd of May. Water is light indeed. Well, that's our program this evening. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Happy holidays, everyone.